So in the previous video, I'll put the link in the description box below. I was interested in finding out if I could use ChatGPT to help me design a web form. And in this video, I'm going to take that result from the previous video a little bit further. And I will also give some discussion as to why I'm actually doing this. So just to recap, what I wanted to do, if this is my web form, I wanted to see if I could have a layout, get ChatGPT to help me design a layout which has got a panel over there and another panel over there, and then I wanted to have some inputs in a panel here, and I wanted to have another panel there, and then I wanted to have a card over here and a card over here, and also with those cards I wanted in each of the card a label and also a button that could toggle the display of the card open and closed. Right, so that's what I wanted to achieve in the previous video, and basically I was able to do that. Over here in the browser you see what I was able to achieve. I've got an area here in which I can display information. These are a few inputs in the top panel, and I asked ChatGPT to just generate some dummy data, and you can see if I click on this button, the card with the information basically unfolds, etc. And it took me about 35 minutes to generate this HTML. In the previous video I demonstrated how I asked ChatGPT to do that and how I copied and pasted the information from ChatGPT over into Visual Studio Code, where I just have two files. I've got one file which holds my HTML markup for the form, and I've got another JavaScript attached to that file. So I've only got two files. And what I want to do in this video is to take this a little bit further, and basically I want to see if I can modify these cards so that each card basically looks like this. So I'll have a title, I'll have a toggle button, and if the user clicks on the toggle, this area will open or close. And I wanted to have some information, and then I wanted to have like a type of a bar chart here to show information about that specific infrastructure element, which is the domain in which I am working. So this is what I want to achieve in this video. But just briefly before we start on that, I wanted to just explain why I'm doing this. As I said in the previous video, I am actually a civil engineer, and I've got a really good team of software developers to help me to take the domain knowledge in which I have got some expertise and to turn this into software. And what I want to try and see is if I can optimize the delivery of code and see if I can use ChatGPT more effectively than posting tickets to the team with mock-ups and layouts, and then the team comes back and we have to ask for suggestions, etc. So in the previous video, as I said, it took me about 35 minutes to get the screen layout that I wanted. So there, that means that instead of making a mock-up in some wireframe software and then posting a ticket with all the instructions, I basically gave those instructions to ChatGPT. But I had to understand the process of setting up my files in Visual Studio Code and copying and pasting the information from ChatGPT into Visual Studio Code. So in this video I'm going to repeat that, but I'm going to take it a little bit further. Also in the previous video I realized that it was very tedious for you as a viewer to watch me type in the commands to ChatGPT. So this time I've already gone through the entire conversation, and I'm just going to walk you through what I've asked ChatGPT, and then I'm going to copy and paste the answers from ChatGPT into my code, and I will use that to show you how we got to this result and how long that approximately took. Okay, so let's go and have a look at the instructions I gave ChatGPT, and then we'll take it from there. So basically, on the screen, I've got on the right-hand side here is my discussion with ChatGPT, and in here I've got my Visual Studio Code in this side, And as I said, under this demo folder, I've got two files only. One is demo.html and one is demo.js, which is my JavaScript. So if you look at the demo.html, you'll see this is just HTML markup. It's not a very long file, and it's not really difficult to understand, even if you're not a software developer. Here I've got the JavaScript. So this is just some code. You can see this is also quite short. And so what I did with this talk is I started talking with ChatGPT, and I started a new chat. I didn't continue the chat from the previous that I used in the previous video. So I wanted to clear the cache and basically start with a new prompt to explain to it what I wanted it to do. And so let me walk you through the instructions that I gave ChatGPT. So over here, this is the first set of instructions that I gave you, and I'll just read this for you and explain why I've put it like this. So I said I have a HTML and JavaScript web form using Bootstrap for layout. So I made it clear that I'm not using some sort of a framework like Angular or Node or something like that. I just have a basic HTML and a JavaScript web form. And I said, and I also said that I'm using Bootstrap. That's the framework to help with the layout, etc. I told it the form has a div on the left holding some input elements, and below that a div holding a scrollable list of cards representing data. Each card has a button to toggle opening and closing of the card details. Below I will list my HTML, and then in the following prompt the JavaScript for the form. Then in the next prompt, I will tell you what modifications I need. Can you confirm this is all clear? Keep responses short but friendly. All right, so wanted it to be friendly. So ChatGPT got it, sounds like a fun project, etc. So here I just went into my, on the right hand side here, I went into my HTML. I pressed basically Control A to select everything, and then Control C, and I put it into this prompt box and I just copied it, right? And then I pressed enter because I told it I'm first going to put the HTML and then in the following prompt the JavaScript. So ChatGPT, thanks for sharing your HTML, and it said you can share your JavaScript. So then back here in Visual Studio Code, I went to my JavaScript file. Again, I went Control A to select everything, Control C, and I copied it in here. Right, and then ChatGPT said your JavaScript looks solid with well-structured logic, etc., etc. And then now it said, let me know what modifications you have in mind. That's what I told it in the beginning. So here goes, this is what I basically, and this is really important to be very clear about these instructions you give it. So I said to it, I want to expand the details for information displayed in the cards. So I wanted to make sure that I want to keep the rest of the code intact. I just want to work on the cards. So I said when the button is clicked, I want to display more information. Currently, the data driving the card has these attributes. So it has an ID, title, information, including the ability to split information onto new lines, and it has color, longitude, and latitude. And I said, here is the change needed. You can see I made a spelling mistake there. ChatGPT, I've seen, is not really worried too much about spelling mistakes. So I said, number one, in addition to the above attributes, add two more attributes. Number one, a label attribute consisting of an array with 7 text values. And number two, a values attribute consisting of an array with 7 numeric values between 0 and 100. Modify the display of the opening card such that the label and value attributes are used to display 7 horizontal bars underneath each other, with the label at the left and the value used to plot a horizontal bar with the width determined by the value, which will always be 0 to 100. Color the bars such that the color is determined by value, with 0 being green and 100 being red and 50 being yellow. Scale the values in between on a green to red scale. Return your code with HTML and JavaScript in separate response boxes with minimal explanation. Double check your logic and the logic before proceeding. Now, I'm not sure if that double checking, if it actually does that. I think that ChatGPT 01 automatically thinks and checks things. I don't know how it works with ChatGPT 4, but belts and braces, I thought that I'd try that and just see. So then it gave me this updated HTML, and as in the previous video, I basically just click here on copy code, and I go back and select my HTML file, and I go Control A and Control V to paste it over it, right? And then I go down to my script and I do the same. So I copy the code and I go to my JavaScript file, Control A again to select everything, and Control V to paste. And this example that I'm running here will be automatically updated when I modify these files. It's a very nice feature of this Live Studio, which you use with Visual Studio Code. And so I'm not going to continue showing you how I copy the code and paste it back into these files, because it's a bit repetitive. I'll just talk you through it, and then I'll cut out the pieces in this video where I actually do that to keep it a bit shorter. But as you can see, after I made these changes, if I look at the updated layout, you see my cards are all gone. Remember, previously there were all these cards here. So now I had to go and try and solve that. I said, no cards are being displayed. Can you check the code and fix with a short explanation? Right, so it gave me this corrected JavaScript. Right, so I'm going to copy this code and try again. And I went here, still no cards. So the cards are still gone. So this is now a situation where it's not giving you what you want. So you have to keep on going at it to try and get it to work. So I said, no, not working, no cards visible, check carefully, then double check before responding. And it came back and it said, ensure the HTML treatment panel exists. So I copied this code and I went in here and I looked in here, and yes, there was the treatments panel. I pasted it in there in any event just to be sure, and I also took this corrected JavaScript, put it in there, and I looked in here, still no cards. Okay, so to make a long story short, after I went through all of this, I basically found that there was just a problem in that this in my JavaScript over here, I had ChatGPT had assumed that the list panel, the panel that will contain all of the cards, had the ID called list panel, but in my HTML I had used another ID for that element. So all of this back and forth just went around that one element ID that was wrong. And so after I made all of these corrections, I looked at the output. Remember, I'd asked it to put those cards with the different colors, etc. And if I look at this, now all the cards here are visible. There's my inputs. And if I open up a card, you can see it's basically in one step, it's gotten really far to do what I want to do. So each of these cards, I can now go and see the data associated with that infrastructure element, whether it's a pipeline or a road or a bridge or whatever. I can quickly see some relative information describing the condition, and that's really the engineering information that I want to get to. Okay, but it's still not quite right. So I went back to ChatGPT, and you can see now I've got really nice bars. All of the labels are listed properly there, and it's made it nice and round, but quite compact as well. So then I said, I asked it, because it said you can either do this modification in your CSS, or you could do it here in the JavaScript. And I said to it, what's best practice? And it said, use CSS for styling whenever possible. So I did what I just showed you. I copied that code into my CSS area, and then it gave me quite a bit of useful information. So if you are really not very familiar with JavaScript or HTML, you can learn quite a lot by just reading from the information that ChatGPT is giving you. So then I said, okay, can you give me the CSS I need to add to my HTML page, which is basically here, and the modified script, and that I've all copied in there. And then can you, so I'll just quickly copy this in to make sure everything is up to date. So everything seems up to date. My bars are nice and tightly packed, and they got nice round corners. And you can see ChatGPT is generating for me dummy values to display on each card with dummy values, and if you can see, if it's close to 100, it's got a red bar, etc. So these changes I could all achieve in this session. And then I said, working well, make the following modifications to the card display. Keep the color, latitude and longitude attributes hidden. So you can see currently, if you open a card, you can see the color and the coordinates, which is sort of just a dummy for latitude and longitude, because eventually I want to show each of these cards also on a map. And so I said, keep it hidden, add an event such that if you click on the card but not on its toggle button, it raises an alert that shows the hidden properties, ID, etc. So here's my updated JavaScript. And no changes to the HTML. And if I go here, you can see I can open the toggle, but if I click inside the card, it gives me that information. Now the reason I asked it to make this change, because I want to take that event and this information and do something with it later on. I'll show that in later videos, where I basically want to zoom in on the map where the card was clicked or something like that. And so I described the changes to me, and I said, excellent. I don't have to say it to the machine, but I like to do that in any case. And then it asked me if you want to do anything more, and I said, I want you to modify the object that holds the data for each card. Assume that the data returned from an API call to get the values for the card will hold a list of values which has this JSON structure. So I basically took a copy here from the type of values that I will get back from my API, which does all the business logic. Remember, I said that I want to plow through all of this HTML and JavaScript, because it's really the business logic, the civil engineering stuff that I want to get to the user. And all of this that ChatGPT is helping me to take out of the way those things which stand in the way of me giving my domain knowledge in civil engineering and helping our users to actually get access to that information. So this information will come from the API, and I'll show more about that in the next video. But then I basically said, modify the script as follows. Change the dummy data to reflect the above structure. So I wanted ChatGPT to prepare the script so that in the next video I'll show how we call this API, and this information is coming now back, and it's not dummy data like we currently have in here, but it's real data reflecting some road network or some infrastructure network. And so these are the type of things that I want to report. I call it 7 keys. So 7 different important decision values. And this is their ranking on the network. And then I said, change the dummy data to reflect the above structure. Instead of showing details using a new line character, show the values in info values. So there's my info values. You can see this array of values. Show the info values one underneath each other for the colored bars, rank labels and rank values for the labels and values respectively. Get the title from the attribute segment name. So there's the segment name. So in this case, it's called Glen Road, and other attributes such as ID, latitude, etc. remain hidden. Double check your modifications. So it gave me this JavaScript. Let's copy that, and no modifications to the HTML, and we can go and have a look at this. So now I've only got one value here, Glen Road, and you can see it did it exactly what I asked. It's got basically everything here, but you can see these labels are a little bit squashed here. Now it alerted because I clicked in there. And so that I wanted to just see how it would perform if I generate more examples like this. So I went and I said, now I said to it, because when I looked here, I saw that these labels were a bit squashed. And I also know that some of this information coming back from the API call is going to have more width around it. So I said, make the sidebar panel about 15% wider. So that means I just have to update my style sheet information, my CSS. So I put that in there for the sidebar. It looks like I didn't have an element for that. I'll just see. Right, so I think it actually did make it wider. So now I went ahead and I said, in the display of the values, the attributes, can you reduce the font and reduce the spacing between the different values? So I wanted it to make this font here a bit smaller, and you can see also there's quite a lot of white space between these values. So I wanted it to reduce that. So then it gave me updated CSS info values, and just have to check whether I need to add or replace. So I don't see anything like that in the style sheet information, so I'll just add it. And now if I look in here, now I can see how much tighter it packed it. And then I went on and said, where you display the horizontal bars, allocate approximately 20% more to the available width to the labels and reduce the width allocated to the bars accordingly. So basically I wanted it to make this area here wider so that all of this text could fit in, and make the bars narrower with the same amount. And so it gave me again bar label and bar container, the CSS, the style sheet for that. So I just have to go and see bar label and bar container, these two. I'm going to Control V to replace them. And now if I go here, you can see now it looks much better. So you can see my labels are displaying quite nicely, and this really looks quite good. So then I said, can you modify the script to generate 100 more dummy data items? Keep all values provided in the example the same, except for the following, which should be regenerated for each dummy card. The ID should be automatically incremented. Assign random street names to the attribute segment name, and assign random values between 0 to 100 to the values in the attribute rank values. So it updated my JavaScript, put it in there, and you can see there's 100 values now with, you can see, very generic type of street names, and it actually duplicated some of the street names. I didn't want it to do that, but that's okay. I basically just wanted to check the performance of this, and I think these cards look really nice. They're very informative. All of this information is generated on the server. So we basically take engineering data and we work on it, do some algorithmic stuff to calculate relative rankings of different values. For example, this is ADT is annual daily traffic, average daily traffic, sorry, and that is an indication of the traffic. So you can see in this example, this would mean that this road has relatively low traffic, but it's got a quite high heavy traffic. And this is the so-called alligator or crocodile cracking. You can see in this example that would mean that this road has low traffic but a lot of cracking and a lot of heavy vehicles. So all of that can be used to drive decision making, and that's what we want to achieve with this type of display. And so I think ChatGPT had gone very well. It gave me all the answers, and at that stage I was really quite happy with this output. And so this was a very useful exercise. I think all in all, it took me probably half an hour, maybe 40 minutes to achieve this. And I have to say, if it wasn't for that piece in the beginning where it wasn't displaying the cards correctly, just because of that one ID that I'd got mixed up, I would have probably achieved all of this modifications in less than half an hour. So you can compare that to generating tickets in your system and describing to your front-end coders how to do this. If you are the domain expert and you in any event have to put this into a mock-up software to explain exactly what needs to be done. Later on in the day, it's Sunday today, so it's quite quiet, no telephones ringing, and I was able to basically connect the API and actually pull real data into this form, and it looked absolutely great. I was very pleased with it. I actually managed to hook up also these inputs to the API so that they are populated automatically, and the form performs really well. So let me know if you are interested to see more, because this tool is going to have more stages of development. And I know even though this domain is maybe not important for you, you may find it interesting just to see where we actually go with this tool and with this concept. Now, in one of the future videos, I'm going to talk a little bit about the issue that I mentioned earlier about how we want to take away the hurdles that stand in the way of us using our business logic and bringing that into our software. So we got all of these peripherals like the user interface and security and all of that type of code is actually just a burden, because what we really want to achieve is to take our domain knowledge, or let's say business rules, and work on those business rules and make them help the customers to get better value out of the software. But we cannot do that if we are spending 70-80% of the time in getting our forms designed, etc., and moving buttons around and things like that. So I will, in some of the future videos, I'll specifically focus on this conceptual issue, and I think that may also be interested if you are a business owner involved with software development, especially if you're working in a very niche industry. I think that will be interesting. So that's it for this video. Thanks for watching.